Hi everybody and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, McCallion, and my good friend and co-host Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you today?
I'm exceptional, Mal. How many more sleeps till Christmas?
Do you know what? It's only 3 more sleeps till Christmas. Are you feeling festive?
Very much so. I'm not putting my head through a reef again this week. I think I've got scars that are going to never heal for that.
We kind of went a bit early on the old Christmas sort of theme, didn't we, last week?
I've got a robin in a snow globe just there. It's my festive nod.
We shook it up last week as well, just so that people could watch it, but I don't know if you've done that this week, haven't we? Maybe between Christmas and New Year, you're still allowed to have those up, so that'd be good. Nevertheless, there are other things to talk about, surprisingly, apart from your robin snow globe. So let's get stuck into some property news. All right, ridiculously, it's been busy. It was the last full week before Christmas, so everybody just wanted to throw as much news out there as possible. So let's start with some news about Christmas festive advertising from the portals. Now, as everybody listening, I'm sure, knows, Boxing Day is the big day in the year that everybody jumps onto property portals, onto estate agent websites, onto the internet, thinks about how can I leave this family because I'm fed up of spending time with them and I need to go and find a new house. Also other things, I'm sure, actually just people going, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we went and found a beautiful new place to celebrate next Christmas. But so the portals, Rightmove and Zoopla particularly, are out there swinging hard and advertising hard at consumers. Matt, this is something of a Christmas tradition in itself now. What's your take on these moves by the big guys?
Well, I'm disappointed not to see my porter in the mix there. We've got the Rightmove dive B 30 seconds, and we've had Rightmove this year already, haven't we, with the people jumping off the cliff outside the house, which I don't know if that's a positive endorsement of the property or not. And then a couple of these Zoopla ones, is it Nana's Cottage and Kids Party, sort of reaffirming them being in the middle of the house buying process. But there's no My Porter. Is that coming?
Yeah, absolutely, of course. We're looking Christmas 2026, obviously going large. But yeah, listen, we're launching in March next year, everybody, in case anybody didn't know. So yes, a bit early, really, Matt, to spend all that money when nobody can actually go and see the site yet. That being said, I thought that the fact that these aren't new ads, right, for Rightmove and for Zoopla. These have been around for a little while, and yes, obviously, trying to drive people through to their websites on this particular day, I think is very obviously very sensible. One of the interesting things when we launched Zoopla back in the day, every time Rightmove did any advertising, and this was before we could afford it, then we saw a spike in our traffic as well. So it's almost like category kind of stuff. People don't necessarily always remember which particular website to go to. They just go, "Ooh, house hunting," and then kind of go on. So I imagine that the interesting one is on the market, right? Actually, what's going to happen there, is CoStar not doing the same as everybody else? Is there a reason why it's not? Is it going to finally launch homes.com /UK in the new year, and then absolutely throw the kitchen sink at that in terms of advertising? But yeah, it did seem like a perhaps less of a story about the two that are advertising and more a story about the one that isn't advertising, because they made such a noise at the beginning of 2024 about what they were going to do from an advertising perspective, and 2025 has pretty much been tumbleweed, right?
Well, if anything, Andy Florence sort of dialed it back, didn't he, at Property Portal Watch over in Madrid, when he was saying that they're not going to be launching homes.com. They're going to focus on the regional brands and how well that had worked in America. So that sort of conveyed that they're going to be keeping domain down in Australia and on the market here, although, as you say, are they going to launch homes alongside it? I'm interested as well from a geeky point of view, because you got them talking about targeted advertising appearing on Netflix and away from the sort of traditional television channels. And I don't actually see, and it's probably because of my category within these advertising, I don't see the Rightmove or the Zoopla. I see the Savills, which probably says a lot about my London location, and also Upsticks, which Richard Durant's moved to, which is sort of the we buy your property at 85% of what it's worth, but we'll buy it now. So they're the sort of targeted property advertisements I get. So whether or not I see the Rightmove and Zoopla on Boxing Day will be an interesting one.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it is so true that everything is so much is now kind of hyper personal, right? And it depends the algorithm depends on exactly what delivers in your eyeballs. So yeah, how widespread these adverts are, how micro targeted they are, probably, as you say, speaks to who. I love the idea that you've got on the one hand Savills. Perhaps he's going to go for Savills, or perhaps he's going to go for the 85% bin fire of his property. Sorry, no disrespect to Upsticks.
I thought you just it's more a commentary on me.
Exactly right. It was intended to be. So that is the portal's advertising over Christmas. Obviously, gearing up for a big start to 2026. But then, interestingly, our second story is actually about Rightmove's forecast for 2026 in property, which is that they think is going to be a buyer's market. So they actually think that it's going to be less about the sort of what the sellers want and much more about how many options buyers are going to have, leading to essentially a flat 2% rise over the course of 2026. And it thinks that the 2026 market is going to be close to the second half of this year, so a bit better, because the first half was so kind of drab and flat. But yeah, it doesn't speak to confidence about what 2026 is going to bring, despite, I think, a lot of people hoping that now the budget's been out of the way, hopefully, fingers crossed, the government isn't going to introduce anything new for a little while. So notionally, everybody should be going gangbusters from the new year.
Well, especially the interest rate announcement last week as well, right? And I think Rightmove summarised it as being a game of two halves for 2025, with that budget-related gloom dampening the second half of the year after an encouraging first half, and they expect that, as you just summarised well, the second half to continue into 2026. And we certainly know that it's been difficult in prime central London with the amount of stock on and not many offers coming in for those properties. But I don't think this is necessarily consistent with other market commentators, is it? So it'd be interesting to see what Christopher Watkin has in his latest set of stats.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say, speaking to agents every day, as I do, as you do, they are pretty upbeat. Now, maybe that's just a category thing, basically, because they're entrepreneurial and generally much more optimistic about life than probably most other humans. But yeah, agents are like actually saying, they're super busy up until Christmas. Loads of instructions being taken on, ready for Boxing Day launches and stuff like that. So yeah, it seems like the music I'm hearing is really, really positive. But it's interesting that Rightmove and that those guys have had a few years to kind of assess what's going on. They've got some significant data points to work from. I think it's going to be, we spoke earlier on about a bin fight. Maybe just a bit of a rough one for everybody.
Well, Simon Ledbetter had his final instalment of The Voice of the Agent, didn't he? And when he published that, he said that actually there's a clear divide in confidence between sales and lettings professionals for 2026 after the sort of cautious budget. And I think he says 6% of sales-focused agents are expecting instructions to rise in 2026, which sort of echoes that comment about stock on the market, whereas 31% of lettings-focused agents share that view, while over a quarter say they're actually pessimistic about the year ahead. So maybe there's a few regional variations in there as well.
Yeah, really interesting. Good stuff. So that's the forecast for next year. We wanted to touch on our third story about conveyancers and the legal side of our wonderful house buying process. The conveyancers have come out and said that basically this is not the problems in the sales market, and the fact that it takes forever to actually get through and buy a property these days. It's not the fault of lawyers, everybody. It is the Conveyancing Task Force, the CTF.
Sounds like something Trump would put together, doesn't it?
It sounds very serious indeed, so we should listen. And they say basically that basically it's the system, stupid. Basically, this is such a rubbish system and we're all locked into it. And therefore, stop shouting at lawyers. They're just trying to do their job in the same way as estate agents. Matt, sympathy?
I was just reading through some of the bullet points there, and one of the ones that the CTF calls out is law tech providers shift liability for data accuracy onto consumers and property lawyers.
Come on.
Which is everybody has that, right? You can't blame the tech for the data accuracy. You can expose where you need to work on those sort of things. And obviously with agentic AI, you can start to plug some of those gaps if the data is available, but you don't start blaming your tools. There's an old adage about that, isn't there?
There is. I seem to remember one from a few years ago. Yeah, yeah. No, look, I do have some sympathy. Absolutely, I think that, there is a real. It's easy to pass the buck. It's easy to point the finger and blame the other side and blame everybody except oneself. But yeah, look, I think that that there are terrible agents out there. There are terrible conveyors out there. There are some average ones, and there are some great ones. So I imagine those that self-select for the conveyancing task force are probably in the latter category, the really good ones. So they probably are absolutely justified in looking around and going, "Do you know what, guys? We're doing all right. We're trying really hard." But it is that they're. You've heard the apocryphal tales, as I have, of basically lawyers just refusing to engage with tech at all, and actually just kind of say, no, I want a wet signature, I want to fax everything through to everybody, and it's going to be
you get your DX numbers out there.
Yeah, 100%.
It's literally a chain, and as they say again, just to pile on another adage, there's your chain's only as strong as the weakest link, right?
Yeah.
So as you say, if it's a terrible agent or if it's a terrible conveyancer, then the knock-on effect is everywhere, and certainly see it with complete ASAP when the team are chasing these updates down and finding out that the update's been in for several days, but the system hasn't been processed or it's been sat in a mail room. Then you are trying to gather that information. There are some great technologies coming along, but at the moment it's not a whole of market, and that again has that knock-on effect on the chain, doesn't it?
It really does. And there's a number of providers out there who are trying to bring this, as you say, the kind of whole transaction in there. So I know Wandome have got theirs. And there's a bunch of others that are working really hard on it, Coju and others. But yeah, look, I think the real problem really is the fact that there's not enough money in it. And it kind of comes back to the fact that this industry, so the UK industry, property industry, has the lowest fees out there. People expect to move house for very, very, very cheap. And we've had entrance into the market over time. It's so easy, you can do it for free. Purple bricks looking at you. And consumers are sitting there going, well, I should be able to get this done for about 300 quid. And everybody should do it really fast. And I just think, that if I'm a solicitor looking at this, I'm only going to make a few hundred quid. Actually, I've got loads of other stuff over here that's really much more lucrative. So I am going to forget to send that particular update. And then, similarly on the agent side, that there are really good people out there that the industry can't afford. And, again, I think that just kind of speaks to the sort of skill set problems as well. So, yeah, look, I do think it's the system. I do think that there are things that can be done to improve it. But I think one of the biggest things, we talked about regulation over time, actually getting to a stage where people kind of respect the process a little bit more rather than just treating it as like, let's try and scrape together some cash and do it on the absolute cheap. So there we go. Solve that problem. Next. Sorry, everybody out there. I know it's way more complicated than that, but all right. We should move away from that and focus instead on our AI and tech news. All right. So, we ended up talking far too much about OpenAI recently, so we're going to go back to talking about Google. So Google has launched Gemini 3 Flash. Okay, and for those that can be bothered to follow the different nomenclatures of why these things are called what they are, Flash means fast. So it's smaller than the big Gemini model, and it goes faster than that one. Actually, and normally that means a degradation in quality, or certainly in terms of its output. Your expectations are that it will be slightly worse answering questions, and potentially it might hallucinate, so it might make things up a little bit more. This one doesn't seem to do any of that, right? It's just amazingly fast.
It's incredible, isn't it, that even this close to Christmas, that Google and OpenAI continue to trade such significant blows. I was going to comment on Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul, but I don't think that's a relevant one because that would be a bit one-sided, wouldn't it? But the fact that Gemini have released this Flash product that's as strong as Gemini 3 and built on top of Gemini 3 is a bit of a warning blow towards OpenAI, and it's always interesting to see what they're going to do next. You started off with a very strong, what was the nomenclature? It's a strong word, and there's a cornucopia.
Yes, I started on that word and then thought, am I going down there?
You've definitely had your ready break this morning, haven't you?
Sure have.
But there's just seeing the strength of this and obviously the cost of it, and it's the default model now. It's that having just commented on how it's UK estate agencies like the race to the bottom in terms of the cost, then it's a similar thing going on with the pricing around these as well, isn't it?
I think certainly, yeah, from the price perspective, but it's interesting because they are working very hard on where the bottom is, and actually on where value is, right? So it's, again, we've spoken many times about the battle for compute. So the thing that is really important for all of these models is, does it have access to the actual processors to be able to crunch the data and the answers and send it back? They're building out so many data centers all the way across the US, particularly down in Saudi and the Gulf, but also up in the northeast. They're looking at getting some data centers and elsewhere too in the UK. So as that build out continues, then the price of this is only going to go downwards. I think it's something like 380 times less now than it was 3 years ago. All right, which is astonishing. And again, it's delivering even higher quality answers than it ever has done. So yeah, I just think it's going to continue to go downwards. Perhaps a little bit more Joshua versus Tyson Fury, which hopefully is coming up. And that's the next thing that AJ's called out. But yeah, look, I think it's an amazing. Regular listeners will know. I quite liked Gemini 3 as it stood. Now it's Gemini 3 as good, but faster. It's amazing. Just as an aside, we've been doing this some adverts for the individual. So doing the 60-day, 60 location tour next year. And basically, I've been asking Google Gemini 3, the Nano Banana Pro inside it, which is the image generator, to basically go through all the dates, pick out the date, time, location, put it on a map. So it's got a little map of the UK with a nice pin in it, and then do a landmark and do a kind of, and do it kind of in a stylized version that kind of matches our brand. And it's just doing a phenomenal job to the point that I keep having to ask it, what's that landmark? And it will go, right, that's actually the Cardiff Arts Centre with wording etched into its copper frontage. I'm like, okay. So yeah, just the ability of these models to be able to render things that you just start thinking, I wonder if it's possible to do that, and then it just does it. It's like insane. So yeah, look, go have a look at this. It is well worth your time, particularly over the Christmas period, just to start to get into this, because it can do some amazing things for your businesses right now.
And on that point, Mark, because we touched on it very briefly last week, given we recorded later, but obviously ChatGPT Image 1.5 is out, and from all the reviews and the testing I've done, it's as capable as Nano Banana and Gemini 3 at the moment. Have you done any comparison while you're creating those?
Do you know what I have? And like you, I think it's very much comparable. The one thing I would say is text. So it's lettering. It still just sometimes doesn't quite get
That's
it right.
1.5, is it, rather than Gemini?
Yeah. So and look, I would say, I mean, it's come on leaps and bounds even in the last 6 months. But yes, I would say I'd probably say it's if Google's like a 9 out of 10, then 1.5 is probably an 8, because most of the time it's fine. But then sometimes it will just either duplicate words, or it will just kind of hieroglyphic one or two of the words along the way, the letters along the way. So yeah, it's still impressive. But yes, Nano Banana Pro, I think still smashing it, basically. Cool. All right. Well, we touched on OpenAI there. Let's talk a little bit more about them, because they are swinging back and have launched GPT 5.2 Codex. Matt, this is very much your department. This is a really, really powerful coding model, right?
It's really strong, and that sort of Codex previous to this was as well. I know we talk about you got Cursor, you got Claude, you got Codex 5.2, and even obviously Gemini Google launched their anti-gravity, and certainly this next model is very much a swinging back and keeping people focused on using it. One of the things that I was listening to at the start of the year, I think it was February, when the term vibe coding came along. And the fact that that's sort of really significantly locked in now, and sort of all these coding models are pretty much taking what people have historically done and almost vibe coding the apps along the way. It'd be interesting to see how that sort of moves into early next year. But I think from OpenAI this week, the real differentiator that we've sort of seen coming is around the apps, isn't it? And the launch of their ChatGPT App Store. Did you catch up with that this week?
Yeah. So again, to your point, and to the fact that we spoke about this a few weeks ago as well. I think that, everybody knows the app store that you get on your phone. Essentially, the idea is you can choose which particular apps from which particular organizations you want to feature on there, so you can easily access them. And what OpenAI is doing is basically enabling that from for any particular AI focused websites or any places that you want to go. So the example that's probably most relevant to us is Zillow over in the States. They have created an app that you can link to directly from OpenAI. If you're on searching for a property, it will say, you're looking for property, would you like to use Zillow? And the reason it does that is because Zillow has a pretty advanced AI capacity. So actually you can, you talk about vibe coding, I think of it as vibe searching. So you can just chat and ask and question, can I find a 3-bedroom property with a sea view, near ballroom dancing classes, etc. So that possibility then allows that Zillow app to be present in your ChatGPT configuration. So this essentially, as we move through, is going to encourage many more organizations to make an easy plugin for the App Store on ChatGPT. Looking at whether there's going to be a replicable to Zillow over here. Obviously, Rightmove, Zoopla on the market have got their own challenges in terms of bringing AI style searches out. Whereas over in the States, all of the properties are available on all the sites because of the multi-listing service, the MLS out there. So essentially 100% of the market is everywhere. So it's all about the experience. That's what they compete on. Whereas Rightmove has sat very fat and happy on its 90% stock for so long, and others have been scrapping around, that it has not innovated over time, and therefore it doesn't have this AI capability and doesn't show any real direction of travel towards it, because that will completely nail its business model. It means that basically people will be able to skip over all of the premium products. Anyway, long answer to your question, which is that yes, I do think that this is significant. I do think it's going to help people to, again, we talk about hyper personal all the time. It's going to mean that your version of ChatGPT, not only has it got memory, not only has it got understanding of your Gmail, your calendar, your emails, all this sort of stuff, it's also going to be able to plug in your favorite apps and your favorite projects and so on. So yeah, I think it's going to be something that builds and grows. I don't think they're going to be alone. I think, obviously Google will copy that, absolutely, as will Anthropic's Claude. But I think it's certainly a really powerful coming together of all these different types of tech.
And it was interesting. One of the highlights, I guess, from last week is that they've hired a head of app development from Shopify. Obviously, that follows on from the Fiji Simo joining as the CEO of apps earlier in the year. So bringing someone in, I'm maybe a little interested by the fact it's come from Shopify and moving towards that shopping, especially with the ChatGPT's shopping research option that came in just within the last month, wasn't it? Well, Glenn Coates joining as the head of app development means that whilst there's the code red, there's still quite plenty of other focus going on around that side of things. And the fact that developers can now submit apps to ChatGPT. So before it seems to be like trusted partners, and we've got one in the tool of the week that almost slipped by last week as an announcement that we'll leave for that point in the show. But there's quite a lot of big bits coming along, isn't there? And even just finishing off on OpenAI and ChatGPT, the final slight announcement last week is that you can now start pinning your favourite chats within ChatGPT, so you're not having to scroll through your long list. So there is functions and features that maybe we're used to in other tools like Outlook, but they're sort of adding those in. And I guess that's probably off feedback, and I'm seeing a lot more of in-app or in ChatGPT products questions and queries and prompts. So obviously being much more data-led, which I guess you expect from the leader in the AI space.
Yeah, exactly. I like you just see these little tweaks here and there. So Google Gemini, for example, has started to, whatever your first prompt is in any given chat, you used to have to scroll all the way back to the beginning again to see what that is. Now Google, as you scroll through that one's kind of always present at the top, whatever your first thing was. So, just little kind of improvements like that. And I like you, I'm really fascinated by the idea of advertising. Actually, what is that going to do? How are they going to integrate it? And what is that going to do to people's trust in what they're seeing? Because this isn't just a Google search, traditional search, organic results, 10 of them that you can pick and choose through. You get one answer with AI, generally speaking. And it's like, well, do I trust this answer now? Is that actually, is it because somebody paid for it that's come to the top? So I do think that there's going to be a real from consumers. People are going to be looking around for brands that actually reflect, that are almost unimpeachable in terms of their trustworthiness. And I think that's a really important lesson for everybody out there, is that the trust is going to be your currency in the world of AI. And you have to, it takes ages to build it, takes a second to lose it. So just really be straightforward, straight up with what you're doing, why you're doing it. And because people will be very, very distrustful of most things that they see very soon, if they're not already. Anyway, right, next up, we want to have a look at fundraising in the AI and tech space. So, yeah, again, where do we start? There is just so much going on. OpenAI, Matt, they're looking to get even more money in because, the hundreds of billions they've gotten already just ain't enough.
I see they've got a new fundraising round going on, haven't they? And that's on top of the story from Reuters, whereby they've got 10 billion coming in from Amazon by the looks of things as well. So it's certainly a time of year. Is it 830 billion they're trying to raise at the moment? So
that's what they're going to try and value the business at, yeah.
And Amazon's obviously going to be a fair wedge of change that they're going to be putting in there, but also they're obviously not spending enough on the Christmas presents, because Lovable has also been valued at 6.6 billion, which is one of the sort of main vibe coding platforms, isn't it? And if no one's actually tried Lovable or Replit and sort of had a play with these things, maybe if you've eaten too much Christmas turkey and you're sort of laying on the sofa on Boxing Day, I'm working with some companies who started off even building out their MVP using Lovable, and it's really quite impressive what you can spin up using sort of this technology. Have you used it, Matt?
Well, I haven't used that one. I've played around with Cursor a little bit, but yes. But again, even somebody as non-tech focused as I am is able to build stuff that you just couldn't ever have hoped to build without a team and some serious developers. And I think that I think the Lovable is really, really interesting because, like, to your point, I think it was only about 5 months ago it went past being valued at $1 billion, and then it only started like the beginning of last year. So it is absolutely phenomenal that essentially, and Lovable is not its own model. It is a combination of tools that sit on top of other models, like coding models, and just makes it really easy to use them. So I think this is what's really, really interesting, and something that that everybody out there can kind of keep an eye on. Is this is happening in the coding space right now, because coding is very much it's almost, without sounding too twee, is kind of binary, right? It's either right or wrong. Yeah, actually, yeah, exactly. So whether you've got it right or you've got it wrong. So that's why coding models have become the easiest or the first for all of these new businesses. Lovable, which is kind of, if you want it to be really cruel, you just call it a wrapper over the top of these businesses. But I think that, but it's worth 6.6 billion. Right. And this, I think, is something that a lot of people are missing, is actually in other spheres. And, again, you can look at property for the audience here. You're going to be able to build over the top of these really powerful models, things like, let's call it search, and actually have really, really phenomenal experiences that get so much business and so many people using it. And I think that in every vertical, you're going to start seeing these. And I think that's going to be hugely competitive to the more traditional ways of going about these things. So yeah, I just think Lovable, Cursor, a lot of these models that are coming through are just phenomenal examples of what is possible within a few years, a couple of years of launch. Right, that's some of the fundraising. There's loads and loads and loads more. But yes, let's have a little look at some of the other things that are going on. Agent skills is something that I think, Matt, you and I were talking about just off air. This is really, really interesting, isn't it? So essentially what you're able to do is to find very specific tasks that have already been kind of prompted and written, and you can plug those into your own kind of platforms, right?
That's it. Claude brought this out in the summer. So skills, so that basically you can reference the skill in your main chat and load it up into context based on a markdown file effectively. So sort of just a plainish text file that you can reference, load in. So for example, I think the one that was sort of utilised when last week OpenAI started quietly adopting this approach in the background, and they were using a PDF editor. So it might be, say, load the PDF and convert it into text, or take this PDF table and convert it into Excel. So loading those contexts from a skill at that point in time, and then only pulling its context at that stage. And now it's been adopted as a global standard very much like we saw with MCP earlier in the year, which was devised by Anthropic. Google had their own sort of standard, and then the whole industry took on MCP, and it's now doing the same with agent skills. And what really interested with me is I work with a company called Nurture Cloud out of Australia. And back in April, Paul, their CTO, started referring to cartridges. And he talked about cartridges in the way that, and we talked about this briefly probably 6 months ago, that like Neo in The Matrix, when he has a cartridge for Kung Fu plugged into the back of his head and he suddenly wakes up and says, I know Kung Fu. It's very similar with these. And so skills is something that has now been adopted, where you can take that context, load it into memory for the time that you need it, and then bin it off. And also these skills can reference each other. So it might be you've got a PDF editor skill, and then within that you can reference off to say, convert this text into a table. So without you having to burn through all that context and all those tokens and obviously that cache associated to it. So it's really interesting to see the AI community come together and adopt this as a global standard.
Yeah, and I think more and more we're going to see that they're kind of like joins, aren't they, between all of these different huge organizations, just like, as you say, like the MCP stuff, just kind of acceptance that, the competing on some of this stuff is just pointless and to the detriment of the overall industry, because everybody just aren't speaking the same language. So yeah, I think it's a really good sign that going forwards as well, that essentially they're not going to fight about the pathetic stuff, the kind of the wires and the plugs and things like that. They're actually they're going to compete on the really good stuff, which is the intelligence and the accessibility and the apps that sit on there. So yeah, really, really excited to see that as well. All right, that is all we've got time for our AI and tech news. We are going to, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing some more about just the kind of the world of AI and tech and how that fits into property. So we've got a special edition coming up next week, haven't we, Matt?
We have indeed. Exciting stuff, isn't it, Malcolm?
Absolutely. So yes, so do stay tuned for that. So it's going to be slightly different. It's not going to be the same format as this one, but yes, we will be back next week. Very exciting around what's been happening over the last year, what's going to be coming up next year, all the stats side of things too. So that is next week. But just before we go, we've got time for our tool of the week. All right, tool of the week this time. It's actually it's a couple of things around Adobe, right? And they're partnering up with a couple of the boys.
That's it. So I alluded to it earlier on, but last week, almost by stealth, ChatGPT launched the Adobe app, so that from right within ChatGPT, you can actually do the Photoshop and actually be calling on the Photoshop requirement actually for free. So it feels a little bit like Adobe's cannibalizing itself. And that's one of the apps that we sort of alluded to earlier. But also they've now partnered with Runway for the next generation of the Runway Adobe partnership. Have you done anything with that, Mark?
Yeah, so do you know, I haven't been able to dive into it. I haven't been using, and I've always called it Adobe, and I just keep convincing people that that's the way I would say it. I don't know what I would say. So Adobe or Adobe, yeah. So I don't play in that with Photoshop and things like that. And whilst I don't kind of what to do with it, it's always been just like way too kind of like expensive for various startups I've been working with. But yeah, look, Photoshop is the kind of default, the gold standard. The fact that it can now be plugged into ChatGPT and you can pretty much use it, as you say, for free. Is interesting. Runway is one of my favorite kind of video creation models. I use it a lot for that. And the 4.5 is off the scale. Great. You can use images and then you can just prompt it to kind of run off from images and then have an end image and it will work out ways of getting from there to there. So yeah, just really, it's a phenomenal piece of kit. Yeah, look, I'm sure that those that are using Photoshop, you should really have a look at how you can plug these various different bits in, because it's going to be something really, really crazy, because Photoshop is so good, basically. All right, one last thing before we go. Our occasional series, although it's quite settled now, actually, it's part of our weekly digest, and we've got the weird AI of the week. Now, Matt, this was one that you spotted, which was about character. So Character.ai, you can basically describe and create an AI character to your own description and for your own purposes. And this particular article is about somebody who's done that quite in depth.
It did, and Character.ai has had quite a lot of scrutiny as well because of some of the way that the AI chatbots almost flip on a sixpence around the character. But this particular guy has spent 2 weeks with Character.ai chatting to the various individuals and sort of speaking to them almost like friends at time, and it's sort of almost a WhatsApp style interface as you work through it. And he actually said that within 2 weeks of working with this Character.ai, actually pushed him into a very strange kind of dread. So very weird that you can have, if you've got no one else interacting with you on your WhatsApp, these individuals that do it, but the fact that their personalities can become quite extreme in a heartbeat is maybe a cause for concern, and one that I don't know how people are going to start adopting this, but the fact that the journalist has got a dread at the end of his 2 weeks is a bit weird.
Yeah, it is. Normally we go for some cheerful, weird stuff, but yeah, this is quite depressing in terms of it's something that we all need to be mindful of, right? If you don't get out of the kind of vortex, then you can get very quickly sucked into, and particularly around characters, I think, whereas you sort of ChatGPT and Gemini's are pretty basic, then and generally kind of geared and fine tuned towards doing things for work and very sort of not mundane, but certainly regularized tasks. And if you are in there for, to make a friend with an AI or to kind of get involved in some kind of relationship with it, then it can become quite dark very soon. So yes, just want to watch for everybody out there, and particularly, I've got teenage kids. It's important that they understand that this has this power, and that it's not something to be treated lightly. All right, listen, that is the end of our property AI report this week. We will end on something cheerful because it is only 3 days till Christmas, Matt. And are you doing what are you up to?
I've got the turkey all set. I've got the veg in. I'm all prepped and ready. So we're at home in London for Christmas. So it's going to be quite a relaxed one. And you've got big parties planned for, Mal.
Yeah. So me and Catherine, we've got 20 people coming all together. So it's going to be it's going to be pretty intense. We were trying to work out how to fit everybody else in yesterday, Sunday, but it's going to be amazing. So really looking forward to that. And we've got a lot of stuff to do between now and then, but it's going to be great fun. So listen, I hope everybody out there is going to have just as good a time as me and Matt. We will be back next week between Christmas and New Year with a special edition all about what you can expect in 2026 from the stats side of things, what everybody's thinking is going to come. Also, just a very quick review of the year as well. So looking forward to seeing you then. Thanks very much for your time today and indeed all the way through this year. And looking forward to catching up next week and into next year. Thanks again. Cheers. Take care.
Have a great Christmas.